Yes, okay. Right from the beginning, again, the invitation to slide into your body. And I guess the essence of this weekend became the practice of relying on silence, and the Tonglen in a nutshell. So the practice of opening to your experience as it is, to be aware, possibly connected with the in-breath. So it's a little thing. It's a little but amazing thing. Not to contract in a certain environment, but to go into the other direction, and to open to whatever is in the present moment. And I think it makes sense lightly, not as a concentration, but lightly to combine that welcoming, that opening to a situation, a little with the in-breath. So it seems to be really helpful. And then to make that a habit, so that during daily life, when we come into a claustrophobic situation, that there is that habit in us of slowing down, shifting, combined with a bit of in-breath into the body, and feeling the contraction in your body or the openness in your body. What is important is that we make this really a welcome. So we are not doing this practice to feel better in the moment. Then you are a materialist, as Thomas Sampo says in the next verse, verse 31. So as long as we practice to feel better in the moment, we not have entered the path. We have not, in the Lamrim, we have not even entered the first scope, the three scopes of the Lamrim. We are just doing whatever everyone does, feeling better in the present moment, and instead of using smoking or a beer, we do a meditation, a mindfulness meditation. And it's fine when we notice that we initially enter the practice just because we want to feel better. That's probably a good start. Many of us would never get to a meditation center or to Buddhism without that natural need in us. But at one time, there's this point where we let go of that more and more. So as Ken MacLeod says in his commentary on verse 31, then we're not practicing to make our life better, but we are living our life to practice. We're living our life as it is to practice. And every situation is manageable in the sense that we can be present. And then sometimes as a side effect, we notice a reduction of the suffering, but that's a side effect. So we reached the last part of the text with the first 31. So the text with foundational practices in the beginning, foundational Lam Rim practices, and then the practice of Lojong, especially combined with the practice of Tonglen. And then the 6 perfections, the 6 far-reaching attitudes. And then there's some remaining advice, starting with verse 31. Yeah, and after the 37 practice, there is a bit of dedication. And I don't know if we will cover the 6 remaining verses, but let's see how far we get. So let's do a little quiet sitting as an invitation to arrive even deeper in this moment and in the meeting. And I will bring some reminders of these 2 aspects, the one relying on silence, and the second, Tonglen in a nutshell. But first, just take some time to adjust your posture and to allow the body to settle. And you can close your eyes if you like that. And then you allow that to happen, this shift from the head into the body, from the agendas and self-improvement projects, from hope and fears into present moment awareness. Possibly somewhat combined with the in breaths. You can also take a couple of deeper in and out breaths initially. And then you allow your breath to find its natural rhythm. And you check the inner weather, befriending your own energy. Initially, it can be the whole body. Whole body is breathing, the aliveness in the body. And you include the feet and the legs, the trunk, the arms and hands, but also the head. And in peripheral awareness, you stay connected with your surroundings, with the sounds in your room, and with the field of togetherness of this group. And if your breath is in the foreground, that's fine, but emphasize the spaciousness, the openness. And that there's a sense that you're doing less and less. So less manipulating, less controlling. Finding an effortless way of being present with whatever is. It's also possible with the out breaths to soften somewhat in the belly and in the shoulders, also in the face, so that your energies can flow wherever they want to flow. And you try not to rely on your thoughts, on the inner dialogue. And returning if you get entangled into the stream, and resting. So we are in the presence of our mentors, just marinating in our own Buddha nature, which is symbolized by those images and the iconography and the soft glow of their courage and love. And whatever is unresolved in your heart, you just hold it into this space without the need to feel better, without the need that it might go away soon, but with radical love. So the main practice is still breathing into present moment. And then possibly in the letting go of the out breath, there might be the gap of resting in silence. So slowly that silence, the ocean of calm, becomes more revealed, and you rest right there. And that silence is in the nature of love. It's essence love, the union of compassion and wisdom, ultimate bodhicitta. And this is where we meet, where we unify. And if there's images, they dissolve. And you realize that the outer and inner silence is the same. That the outer Dalai Lama compassion and the inner compassion is the same. And the movements are recognized as movements of that same silence. Everything arises from silence, is silence, and dissolves back into silence. Rest in silence, rely on silence, which is this, just this moment, is in the nature of silence, is in the nature of love, including the contractions. This is all there is. Nowhere further to go. Then we can open our awareness even more into the human brotherhood and sisterhood, including the animals, and resting in silence for them and for us. And being a source of love, being a source of wisdom and compassion, pouring out into your inner, and also outer life, which is basically the same. It's all you. And there's nothing more to attain or to understand. This is it. Spacious aliveness in the nature of love. You have arrived, your home. And that's why we're here this morning, to be reminded, to familiarize ourselves for the benefit of all. And then we turn back. You want to shift your position. Sit comfortable. As yesterday, you can always just unmute yourself and make a comment or ask questions, or in the break. You can write in the chat. Also, if you want me to turn to a certain topic, something which has not come up yet, connected with the text, then you're very welcome. So I don't feel that I'm under pressure to, cover more than one line. So I will read verse 31. If you don't go into your own confusion, you may be just a materialist in practitioner's clothing. Constantly go into your own confusion and put an end to it. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. It's a beautiful image, the materialist and practitioner's clothing. And I think the Tibetan teacher who talked about this the first time was Trungpa Rinpoche. In the 70s, he wrote this book, Spiritual Materialism. And so that's the materialist closed in a facade, in a shell. So go into your confusion. That is exactly this shift from struggling and fixing and controlling and using all kinds of things, also spiritual practice, to feel better in the present moment. So here the counter-instinctive move of giving up. Giving up not in the sense of resignation, but in the recognition that by giving up hope and fears, giving up the hope for a better past and the hope for a better future, there's a shift, a reduction of our immediate resistance and the possibility to grow in that situation. So not growing in the sense that we feel better, but grow in the qualities of patience, compassion, wisdom. So we become more and more independent from the need that our life goes a certain way. So we don't express progress in samsara. Samsara is not fixable. So also in this situation, the important thing for a practitioner is now not how it's going to develop, what's going to happen, because we have accepted that there's only one direction in samsara, and that's up and down. But we are more focusing on the processes with which we handle any kind of situation. So that's what we hope, or that's where our inspiration is. So the inspiration is not, or may I be free of that discomfort. The inspiration is, may I have more patience to be with the discomfort of being a human being and working on that. So obviously that does not mean that whatever we can do to improve the situation for others, we do that. So it's not like resignation and then giving up to be involved. Actually, the involvement from this kind of space is much more effective, much more creative, because you are not collapsing into the fight-flight process. So you stay connected with an overview of the situation and a more common sense approach to any situation. So the question doesn't become, okay, how can I turn this into the situation? How can I turn this situation into something which serves my needs? How can I turn this relationship into a relationship which serves my needs? But it turns around into how can I make this place a better place for everyone, including myself? So this is also part of this. It comes up in a later verse. No, now I'm confused. Tonight I'm teaching Shantideva. So this morning I read Shantideva, a verse about the 3 kinds of laziness. Yeah? But so one of the 3 lazinesses is losing heart. Yeah. So when we get into experiential, into what I just tried to explain, we never lose heart because we understand that every situation is manageable. Not manageable in the sense that there's a good end. There is no good end in samsara. But manageable in the sense that whatever it is, even the most terrible outcome of a certain situation is manageable and can be transformed into gold for the practitioner. And then from that freedom, having no agenda, also having no agenda, part of this is that we understand the complexity of the situation. So we understand that every situation is a dependent arising, and we can only contribute what we can contribute, but we can't take away the karma of the society we live in. We can't take away the karma of this planet. We can just give our best and grow within that.
Stefan.
Yeah.
When you said that the situation can turn into gold, do you mean that it's a chance to practice?
Yes. Yeah. So again, not the situation. No, yeah, it's not well put. Yeah. So not the situation turns in gold, but we use it to make gold, and you can say the heart of gold. We can use it. We can transform it into something which where we grow. Yeah. And obviously we'll also fail with that, and we will fall into reactive patterns. But even that is an opportunity. So failing and then having guilt or disappointment or despair. So that is also then that kind of situation where we opportunities. So where we grow, like increasing our tolerance towards the failure of other people. And
yeah, thank you.
So Ken McLeod is really strong in this point. I can't remember that except of Trungpa Rinpoche's spiritual materialism. I haven't heard, and he says this in different places. I'm listening. I have been listening to his teachings for many years now. So he is really very emphasizing. He's often emphasizing this point that as long as what we do in our so-called spiritual practice, as long as it is this kind of short-term self-improvement, feeling better, in his point of view, we have not taken the seat of a practitioner. And that's very strong, that point, because that's not what the marketing of meditation and also many Buddhist centers tell us. And of course, it's a huge disappointment for the loop of the narcissistic I, yeah, because that's very difficult for that part of us. And this is not something easy to overcome. I mean, it will be only really overcome in the moment where we not only understand selflessness intellectually, but when really through a recurring, direct not finding of the solid separate self, it just drops away. Yeah, it's gone. Until then, it will always resurface and reassemble. And we have to accept that there is in our actions, even if we make like lip service to bodhicitta, there is always a narcissistic component. And this narcissistic component is always contaminating our compassionate actions and whatever we do. So it doesn't make sense to judge that or feel bad about it, or pretend it's not there, pretending that I'm acting out of bodhicitta. We start to act out of bodhicitta once we have directly and permanently realized selflessness, anatta. Until then, we have to be loving and kind and patient and humorous about this little parasite, which is just busy about staying alive because it's so scared. It feels its own insubstantiality. We know that it's insubstantial, but it just keeps running. And that's how it stays alive and running, being busy to make us feel better. So also there, it's so important to develop a tenderness. And this is also, there's one verse coming up where Tongme Sampo talks about how we have this tendency to talk badly about other people, particularly about practitioners and teachers, and also people who might have deeper awakening experience than us. So to have that tenderness and that understanding how this process is also happening in us. So that helps us also to judge us when we notice that, but also from there, less judgment towards others arises, more tolerance towards the narcissistic movements and self preoccupations of other people. It's so important that we meet that with love, with compassion, with understanding, that we are sitting in the same boat and that we all make mistakes. We are all human beings, we all make mistakes. And it's very difficult to meet people who are really acting from uncontrived, stable bodhicitta. I met only one person, and that's Lama Zopa. And I didn't met His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but it's kind of, I assume that with him as well. But otherwise, I have not seen much. Even in masters and teachers and Tibetans. It's of course it's easy to take on the appearance, the clothes of a practitioner, like maybe even putting on special clothes, like the monk's clothes or mala and stuff like that. It's a bit tiring to see all this pretense in Buddhist centers. People are not being vulnerable and honest, but trying to protect the shell of bodhicitta, and we are doing this for others, but then they can't lead a proper team meeting because it's so contaminated with their own agenda, and also they don't develop the skills, the relative skills to do this work. And then to not listen to the critic, to the judge, which is judging you and the other people. Yeah. Particular leaders, center leaders or teachers, baby teachers like me, and all the others who are just like us. I mean, we are all screwed up, with a few exceptions possibly. But these exceptions, they are really rare, I think. And with Lama Zopa, I can have really some confidence because I have been around him and I saw him acting day and night. I mean, I have been around him day and night. And I couldn't see a trace of self-occupation. He never takes a break for himself, not even a cup of tea. Offering the cup of tea for all sentient beings is more important for him than drinking it. And then in a being like that, I mean, it's almost not proper to call that Lama Zopa a human. I mean, he is in a human body, but he's not of this world. Then actually, like this, there's an instruction like make every breath, bodhicitta. And with Lama Zopa, it seems to be true that every in-breath and every out-breath is offered to everyone. And we can have the inspiration or the aspiration to grow into that. And this is very beautiful, it's very powerful. That's why we take the Bodhisattva vow. So we could really celebrate and rejoice in our aspiration and our intention, even if sometimes it feels a bit awkward, or like unhonest. Like, I mean, if you say, "May I be of benefit to all beings today," and then constantly your reactivity surfaces, then sometimes it feels like, it feels not right, or you feel like a liar. but to plant this energy of this inspiration is so beautiful, so powerful. It's the most beautiful thought we can have, and it's our compass. Yeah? It's the direction. We are on the path, yeah? And that is a reason for a healthy confidence and a healthy sense of meaning in one's life.
May I ask you something again?
Yes.
I was thinking about the thing about saying those words, to planting the seeds. I have my daily prayers, and because I've done them every day for many years, I know that sometimes I just say them and don't reflect much about it.
Yeah.
I say it, and at the same time I think about something else. And sometimes it's easier for me if I only think something really simple, like in the morning, like, may I do a good job today? Or like something that is more practical. I don't know if you have some advice on how to balance that in a good way. When the words become, it's like I become immune to the words.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, first, I think even saying the words, and even if if it's just sound, I think in this case I would say there's some benefit, because it's still something. Like I noticed some of the prayers. Like I have done the 6-session Guru Yoga now for like 15 years or something like that, and I don't do them in a formal practice, but like they just happen in daily life. And some of the sentences, because I have said them so much, so they are so close that they kind of they pop in. And I think I'm so familiar with these verses, I can say them at my death time, like with the rest of my conceptual thoughts. I think they could resurface, because they are much familiar to me than any other song, or any other advertising song or something like that. So I think there's some benefit in it. And then what you say, there's also sometimes the possibility to first connect with your body and say the words with a deeper meaning. But then also for me, it is important to read text like this and then stumble upon verses which express the same in a different way, maybe with a different metaphor or with slightly different words, and then there's again some freshness. And definitely it is possible to kind of retranslate the verses you say, or as you say, to make something very simple, either as an addition to the prayer. So that's possible, because also if one feels I have to fulfill my commitments, and there might be some fear if I don't say the exact words, then I don't fulfill the commitment. Of course, that's ignorance, but I mean, it's in us, this kind of fear. If I don't say it like exactly like this. But then in addition, or if one is brave enough to, for some time to drop these practices and to ask yourself, so what's the essence of these practices, and how can I put this into my own words? Then definitely I think that's possible. because I mean these words they have been translated in different ways, and so I think there's no problem in, and even if we kind of slightly misunderstand them in our own interpretation, then I think for me it's always more important to be somewhat connected with an authentic part of me and with the experience of these words. And some of the things they can be expressed much more simply. Yeah? So just one sentence comes to my mind, which I have been saying now often in a dedication, and that's from His Holiness, one of the dedication prayer of His Holiness, and it is a simple sentence: "May people look after each other." And that touches me, and it's a simple prayer, and it's so powerful. I mean, if that would happen, I mean, that's all we need, that people look after each other. And when I say that, and maybe I use this sentence a few years now, for me it has not lost its touching quality, its opening quality. So I could, of course, now think, oh, I need to go through all these dedication prayers of Lama Zopa, and I have to say them exactly that way, and this and that, and long life prayer and stuff like this. And I'm so tired and sick of this. Yeah? And I'm aware that there is teachers who would say, you have to do this. You have to say these words, and you have to stick to the text. But I gave up on that one. I think it's a mistaken teaching, but don't trust me in that. I'm just sharing my own way to handle to work with this. And I've learned that a bit in all these years when I was in Nalanda Monastery, because we did this long. I mean, we did every morning for 8 years. I missed one session. I'm really a goody boy. In 8 years, imagine that. Yeah. And that one session I missed because I consciously decided to stay in bed. Because I thought, oh, you're a freak. Everyone is missing session, and you are there every morning. So I stayed sweating. I had almost a panic attack. I just didn't go, just to establish my freedom. But what I learned in these, hours, and a lot of it in Tibetan, and so what I did more and more was I just picked a few things in that practice. I picked that, and so these things which at that time were touching me, and that's what I then focused on. I did also blah blah blah, all the Tibetan singing and so on, but I was touched by certain aspects in the practice, and that changed, throughout the years. There were different aspects of the practice which suddenly made sense to me, but I really want, when I do any kind of practice, I want this practice to touch me. I want to feel it. And if it doesn't, then I retranslate it, or I do it differently, or I simplify it. And then with the Tibetan prayers, for example, I would just do shamatha practice on sound. That was my practice, enjoying the movement of singing and the togetherness in the singing. That's how I gave that time then meaning for me.
May I say
I
something?
think it's a sad thing that many Tibetan practitioners, they are stuck with these hours of practice, sadhanas, called sadhanas, text complicated, and nothing changes. There's no experience. Like 20 years of practice, and there's no transformation happening. Yeah?
May I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very liberating, the things you talk about right now. Because, I mean, you must see all this as tools to be awake, to get. And if the tool doesn't tell you anything or work for you,
yes,
what's the point? I mean, I can't imagine how it is to be in a monastery for that long time. I mean, I have no experience of this, but still, if any tool doesn't work for you, I mean, it's no point.
Yeah, that's I agree with that. But as a practitioner, in the Tibetan tradition, with commitments and the interpretation of the teachings which are taught in the West still, it's really it's a hard journey to find your own way in this, because the Tibetans, how it is taught, it's still a lot based on instilling fear and guilt, and it's very difficult for us as Westerners to not fall into that trap and lose the connection with one's practice, but keeping on doing it just because one is afraid. Yeah, in the Tibetans, they are much more relaxed with that. Yeah, so when I talked with some of the Geshe who was teaching in Nalanda, and I asked him how he is doing the all the commitments connected with the initiation he received, and he said, I'm just saying the mantra once to keep the connection, and then the essence of practice is bodhicitta and emptiness. So it's not reading 2 hours of text. That's not so you keep the samaya with the initiations and with your teacher. If these 2 things, bodhicitta and emptiness, are somewhere present in your reflection, in your practice, in your prayers. But there's a lot of fear, and with many teachers, and it's very heretic what I'm saying now. So I'm not. don't. You have to. That's the thing. You have to find your own way in this. Yeah. I can't take the responsibility for that. I can just share how I try to find my way in this. And so many teachers I have asked this kind of questions quite a lot of cases, because people come to me with this struggle. That they have taken some tantric initiations and they have the commitments, and it's a pressure for them, and so then I ask them, and it's like 95% of these teachers I ask, they gave me answers I didn't want to hear. But luckily, I found a few who showed me the direction I just tried to describe. And it is there. I mean, like in the 6-session Guru Yoga, there is, for example, a 4-line prayer which covers the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, and then you can retranslate that 4 lines. You can make like a a journey with it, you know, like just looking into the Tibetan words, how they are translated, what do they mean, and then you can play with different versions and make your own songs. You can write a melody for it, you know, make a painting. So you can allow your own creativity to make a part of the journey with that practice of the 6-session Guru Yoga. It's also in the Gelug tradition. The monks who study so much, so they also take initiations, and it's very clear that they are told, you know, you don't do the practice, you focus now on this. Yeah? So you took the initiation, and there's a blessing and there's a seed, but now you study emptiness. So that's what you focus on. There's no time for doing a 2-hour tantric practice a day. So, I mean, if the monks can do that, so I have no hesitation to say that to a mother. You know? So instead of doing your 2 hours sadhana, just you know, count the times you clean up your baby. How do you call it? Windel. What's that in English? I don't know. You know, how many of these paper things have you removed and thrown away? Yeah, so not 100,000 Vajrasattva mantra, but you know, 10,000 of those. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes.
But Asa, no, is your name? Yeah, I think so. She said, okay. I really agree, like, and I can feel it also, like sometimes this resistance, but I think sometimes it's also good to go into this resistance, no, and to do these prayers, even if your mini-E says, no, why should I do this? No, I don't see the sense. I really remember in my yoga formation for that last 4 years, we had pranayama week 10 days, and every day 3 hours, 3 exercises, breathing exercises, and my resistance was so strong. And but it was really good because I just like I made like friendship with my resistance, and I was just sitting there and I tried to relax in this. So I think it can also be an opportunity, no, like probably not for too long time, but also to go a little bit in this field, no.
It's a good addition, Katharina. Yes, thank you. That again shows how complex it is. Yeah. Because I would also sometimes say a bit along these lines. Yeah? And I also have had the experience, as you described, for example, with the Guru Puja in Nalanda. So there was also the benefit of, what was that? Ah, yes, some theory or some so there is something there. Yeah, I agree.
Could I just have one comment on that?
Yeah.
I started to do yoga when I was quite young, and I was so ambitious. Every morning I did it. I was just a teenager and very ambitious, and I ruined it completely for me. I was too ambitious. I hated it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, you know, you see how complex it is, because now Asa is again a bit kind of balancing what Katharina said. Yeah. So so we can see that there is like how to find the middle path. Yeah? Yes. And not to go into the extremes. Yeah. No. So I have talked a certain extreme way, and then Katharina balanced it out a bit, and this kind of journey, which we now do in the group, that's also a part, that's also internally, it's happening internally in all of us.
Yes, and even more strange is that this autumn I saw a sign in my neighborhood about a yoga class, and suddenly I felt maybe I should try it again, and this time it was fun.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So it's very complex. I mean,
yes, yeah. And I went through all of this. Also, what you just described, because at one point, it was in the last year when I was a monk, I met one of my teachers, Peter Fenner, and he has this radical teaching of giving up your practice. You know, so I just dropped the whole thing. Yeah. And then I was surprised that some of the practices I kept on doing a bit with the thought of Katharina, yeah. So being with the resistance and trusting the teacher. So, but then I just dropped the whole thing. All commitments, they just went down. It was so scary. I was just waiting for hell to open. and then after a few months, some of the things, they just resurfaced, but completely different, because it was not coming from duty and guilt and fear. It was there in me through habit, and I started to enjoy it, and I was not interested if I would fulfill a commitment or something, but I actually started to fulfill my commitments again, and there was no duty in it. It just happened, and there was joy and creativity in it, and reflecting on the essence of these practices. So, yeah, it's good.
So can I comment?
Yeah.
My name is Lena here in Stockholm, and I'm very new to all this, but still, I would like to say that I was somehow hearing from Sarah this, that not quite being in the words with the heart, but for me it comes like a reflection on not always, but mostly in the summertime, I do a lot of walking in the countryside, and it's kind of agricultural countryside, so there is not so much, it's not like going in a nice park where you can go round in different directions. It's kind of, you can walk this way or that way. Are we going this way or that way? And we walk with friends, and we do the same walk almost all the time. And it takes some hours, and we kind of do this walk. And the pace might differ a little bit. But then the weather differs, and maybe the talk differs a bit, or maybe there are somebody is a bit annoyed about something or is worried, and it might start raining, or it might not, or there's a dog barking, and kind of all these small things, and that it is now spring, or it is now summer, or it's now fall, or it is even winter, is kind of part of the walk. So I find that for me, I could make the association of your practice with these prayers or so as a walk, and you make your walk and see what it looks like today. And maybe you're not thinking about where you're walking at all. You're moving your legs without thinking, and that's also okay. What happens is, for every time you do the walk, all the other walks are there with you. It's funny, they kind of accompany you, and that's what I find such a beautiful. I can think of these walks and how they are just kind of multitude of the same place, same walk, the same steps, and just the trees are changing a bit. Do you follow me somehow in this image? So I'm
beautiful. Wow, this is so good.
I will now mute myself.
This is really a good addition to this discussion. It becomes more complex and complex, but beautiful, yeah. with your description, you almost want to do the 2 hours sadhana again and trying it out what you say. I will definitely remember this one. Yeah. If at one point I have time for 2 hours to talk about this topic, yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it becomes really rich. Yes.
Yes, hello. I'm also thinking about that in the beginning when I remember when being new to Buddhist philosophy, it seems that the more you study, the more complex it becomes as well. Because to begin with, you need to remove the major obstacles, the obvious delusions, but then it feels as if you can become in this kind of zone where if you say the prayer slightly wrong, you offend the Buddhas, or like it sounds like it goes into the detail. Whereas you like doing the practice, you didn't do it 10 years ago, but then so in some levels you kind of engage yourself deeper. But on the other hand, you're also at risk of falling off, I don't know, this kind of path because of some kind of idea of you making a mistake, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, it's right. So I really appreciate that I had this 8 years with this intensive journey with the Guru Puja, because it became deeper and deeper. My understanding grew. So if I would have dropped it after a year, then I would have missed the profundity and the richness of this ritual, because it literally needed like 5 years of study to kind of start to understand some of the stuff. Yeah. So that's again more a point towards sticking somewhat with the practice and understanding. As a beginner, we can't have all the understanding right now, which we will have in 5 years or in 10 years. Yeah. Okay, so wow, that's great. Beautiful. So thank you. And let's have a break, 10 minutes. And we start with a short practice of Tonglen in a nutshell and relying on silence. So with the in-breath, opening to the situation, to your inner and outer world, slowing down, shifting from doing to being. And with the out breath, possibly softening the belly, the shoulders. And then after a while, at the end of the out breath, to listen, to just rest. So that the natural silence of this moment can reveal itself. And then you rest there. In silence and movement. And then you can allow the silence to penetrate your world. The loving silence. And returning, resting, present moment awareness, spacious aliveness. It's all within awareness. It's all inside of consciousness, in the nature of consciousness. Vividly appearing like rainbows, like a dream, but unfindable. There's no substance there. It's made from silence. Okay, and then we open our eyes again if they were closed. At the end of a session like this, if you do it in the morning, one could put the intention or the prayer, may I remember this little journey throughout the day, again and again. In the 30-second meditation. And then a sentence like rely on silence or some other anchors, reminders. Then you will find yourself doing this possibly every hour or at least a few times a day. Some people use a meditation app to, in the style of Thich Nhat Hanh's mindfulness spell, which is exactly that. So throughout the day there is a sound, and in that moment everyone pauses and slows down and does that little journey. So let's go to the next. There's verse 32. You undermine yourself when you act emotionally and grumble about the imperfection of other bodhisattvas. Of the imperfection of those who have entered the great way, don't say anything. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. And it is actually very connected with verse 33, so I'm also reading that. When you squabble with others about status and rewards, you undermine learning, reflection, and meditation. Let go of any investment in your family circle or the circle of those who support you. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. It's actually slightly different, but then the next verse is about criticizing others. So let's talk about this topic of criticizing others, talking badly about others, seeing the mistakes in others. So emphasizing the bodhisattvas, and of course, from the outside appearance, we can't say if someone is on the bodhisattva path or not. So it applies to everyone. So this, for us, this is the important topic of becoming aware of the inner judge, the inner critic, which then reflects also how we look upon others. So this has to do with you all probably reflected upon this and you have worked on that, and it's a topic I have been teaching since many years, and I come back to it, starting with many years ago when Tara Brach published her first book, Radical Acceptance, which is a book on the topic of the inner critic, of the inner judge. And in my experience, in my own life, but also working with people, this is probably one of the inner processes which contribute to all our tension and struggle and unhappiness. And it's very strong in Westerners, and it was difficult, and it is still difficult for Tibetans to get that in us, to see that in us. Some do, like Lama Yeshe, but I think a teacher like Lama Zopa, I'm not sure if he is aware of the intensity of that mental sickness in the West. Yeah? So the way he teaches, I can see that it catches people often in that point. Yeah. And there's a lot of that going on in the FPMT, of judging each other and pressuring each other and making students feel guilty. So it's Lama Yeshe in the FPMT who balances that out. Yeah? And you can see when you read his books or you listen to the old videos that he is not triggering that point. Yeah? So he's more emphasizing that he's more emphasizing the goodness in us, the Buddha nature in us, and is talking about that. Yeah? And that's what we often lack. So we lack the connection and the trust in our goodness. So we have more a sense that something in me is screwed up, something is wrong. And if anyone would see who I am really, then they would reject me. And there's shame, guilt, and the mantra of I'm not good enough. And obviously that kind of habit of looking into your own inner life, that's also the way we look at other people. And there's almost sometimes a bit of joy in finding the mistakes and failures and in other people, particularly in teachers, but also in fellow practitioners. Something in us. It's interesting to observe what do we get out of it. To talk about, to slander, to talk about the behind the back of people. So what is it? Why do we do that? And what do we get out of this? Yeah. It's a very strong culture in some companies, for example, but also in centers. Yeah. I remember the first time when I came to Nalanda Monastery. The monk who picked me up, the first thing he did was to talk about the screwed up people in the monastery, and that was not like just an exception. It's more the common thing. Yeah. So of course the solution here is to address that first in yourself, yeah? To become aware of the harshness with which you talk with yourself, the whip you are using, the constant feeling of falling short, the constant feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable as I am. And it's understanding in a culture, a Christian culture first, the misinterpretation of the Christian teaching, they support that feeling of being a sinner, and then also growing up in a society and in families where it was about the output. Yeah? So we, as children, we often didn't feel seen and accepted as who we are, but our parents, they tried to shape us in a way they thought would be good for us. Yeah? So we developed that mistrust in our qualities and in our being. Yeah? And many people, they have the feeling that they don't fit in, yeah, because they feel they don't have space to express themselves, because they have been told that you're too loud, or you're too quiet, or you are too playful, or you don't play enough, or you are not smart enough, or you're too smart. You are joyful. You're too joyful, or you are too sad. Yeah? So, Tibetans, they don't have that as much, because they grew up in a culture of welcoming every child as a potential Buddha, with Buddha nature, with the basic goodness. And if you grow up in that trust, that in that deep trust in your own sanity, that's a very different thing than us. And then we bring this judgmental, critical view on ourselves, we bring that to the teachings. Yeah? So also the teachings, they land in our psyche as a burden, as something where we don't feel good enough, where we pressure ourselves, where we have ideals about how we should be and not a lot of space who we are already. Yeah? One of my favorite practices regarding that, I mean, there's the work of Tara Brach. Yeah? A few years ago, there was an online conference with Sounds True, with Tami is her name, the owner of that publishing organization, and it was a conference about acceptance, self-acceptance. Yeah? I think it's still there for free. So, and there's like spiritual teachers and therapists. And definitely we need to look into therapeutical thinking, because you are not going to find remedies and healing within the traditional Tibetan tradition. So it has to do also with our curiosity towards our psychological history and the culture we're living in, and how much we're influenced by that. And you don't find that kind of information and that kind of wisdom in the traditional teachings. So there's also then the work of Christy Neff and Christopher Germer. Yeah? They work together. They started that separately, and they both wrote books about self-compassion. So that's also very useful to look into that. And I got to like a very simple mantra regarding this, and that is, I love myself. And maybe some of you have listened to a guided meditation where I invite you into this sentence with different words. Maybe I love myself is maybe a little too much for some people, but I love myself, and when I'm afraid, I love myself more, because I deserve to be loved more, not less. So that's basically the instruction of that reflections. And it's quite amazing for me still, if I remember, when there's contraction, when there's tension, when there's unhappiness in me, then just I love myself. I can immediately feel how there's a relief. Yeah, there's space. So the rejection towards how I feel lessens, and instead of responding with harshness, whatever it is, there's acceptance, and then I can feel how the emotion is not that heavy anymore. So it's a beautiful, simple daily practice, which is also one of the practices when we go to the first practicing day and night. So I think that fits almost always, this I love myself. And then finding ways to get a body sense of allowing yourself to be loved by yourself. Yeah? I mean, how does that feel? Yeah? And that takes time. The guru-mentor bonding process is one of the traditional methods which can help us to get a sense of a body-felt sense of unconditional love, which we might not have met in our life. So how would our body know? How would our system know how it is? Just a moment. How would our body know how it is to be loved? Yeah? And I think that makes also the relationship to a Tibetan teacher so powerful, because for many people it's the first time when they meet a teacher like His Holiness or other teachers who embody this quality, that for the first time in their life they feel how it is to be genuinely loved, yeah, without any agenda, without any manipulation, but like unconditionally. And how does that feel? And for those who have not had that connection, maybe you can remember moments in your life from childhood or later with your partner, where you relax into that feeling. Wow, this person really sees me. Usually at one point we screw it up, but there are these moments. I mean, we screwed up in a relationship. It gets into the opposite, like the inner judges jump up in both of us and we see the negative aspects suddenly. But there is this moments where you completely relax into the arms of your partner, where you feel safe and seen and loved, and then to remember that and to bring this into the words of I love myself. Yes, you wanted to say something?
Okay.
No, you are unmuted. You are unmuted.
Hold on.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know.
Hold on. Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit. My computer is a bit slow. So, I was thinking about one feeling that I have in regards to this is the kind of the self-grasping, the idea of satisfaction, that you kind of have somehow a projection of yourself, or that you cling on to, that in somehow that I feel if you not think about yourself, thinking about others, the kind of to work with the generosity of giving in a way, by even if you don't do it with a like full realization or something, but the act of giving creates positive that makes you feel better. So in a way I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's this miser that you think, oh, I'm so unfortunate and this and that, and then you cling on to the negative aspects rather than focusing on the other, I don't know, something about what you can do instead of what you want to receive. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So there is the benefits of dualistic giving, for sure. And it is usually contaminated. So there is often in dualistic giving, there is often, yes, it feels good, unless in that moment the dualistic giving is really genuine without agenda. And of course that happens. So then that giving would be more would be more in the direction of wise giving. Yeah. So as long as we can only give dualistically, then that's better than nothing. And the reason for judging ourselves, the root cause for judging ourselves, or the contamination, the narcissistic contamination in our actions, is self-grasping. So that's in the long run, we deconstruct the self-grasping, the grasping onto an independent, solid, inherently existing I, and that would undermine and relax the contamination in our actions. But as long as there is the self-grasping, giving is good, or the other perfections, the other far-reaching attitudes, even if they are built on a bit of self-grasping, it still creates good energy. Obviously, we can feel it. It's good that you mentioned that, because when I talk about the contaminated aspect, I'm not doing that to undermine our dualistic generosity. Yeah. Any question about or comment about the topic of judging ourselves and others, which cover two of these verses? And as with all other practices, Ken McLeod gives the direction of Tonglen with the inner judge, feeling, loving, seeing, and resting in silence, and then acting from a more relaxed space. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Sure, you have to start with yourself, but I've recently had this experience with my son. He's been extremely paralyzed by these inner critics, and it's very, and not, I mean, obviously he doesn't love himself at all. And this is somewhere, it's very painful to watch this and to see him suffer. And I've tried in so many ways to make him see it in a different way, but it's like a hard rock. It doesn't. And I feel so desperate about it. It's just there. It doesn't go away. It contaminates everything in his way. And I also see exactly the inner critic. He's criticizing himself and judging himself all the time, but at the same time he's criticizing others. Of course, you can see it very easily. But it's kind of, I don't know if you have any advice what to do. I mean, it's so frustrating to see this, and there's I feel so hard to help.
Yeah, maybe this is a good question to bring into the break for all of us, because I guess we all see that in people, and it's we wish they would see their beauty and their uniqueness, and we wish we could communicate it. Because often it happens that we are able to love a person more than this person loves him or herself. It's a quite common experience, and then it's so how to be in that kind of situation. Particularly, of course, it's so hard when it's a child, because you have always seen the uniqueness and the beauty in your child. I mean, it's in your, from the first moment he came out, and the commitment of the mother and father to support this being is very, very strong. It's such a powerful, beautiful force. It is really resembling bodhicitta, because that's where most people, for the first time maybe in their life, take the needs of another person more important than their own. And that is like the quality of bodhicitta. It's regarding one being, but at least one being. It's very painful to see that. Let's kind of bring this with us into the break, and then maybe we can talk about this after, because I think that's a very important topic for us, and a reflection on this also would help us to find a way with our internal family system, because there's not only the outside son and the outside daughter, but there's also the inside daughter and the inside son, and that's a good place to start. Obviously, our children learn a lot on how we are in our life. So it's often, how old is your son?
He's 23.
Yeah, he's out of the house. I mean, he's the influence of the mother is is not so big anymore. Actually, anything the mother tries to do would be maybe counterproductive.
Yes, sure. I've always
more resistance and more insisting and even going deeper there. Just because mother wants to have it differently.
Yes, I try to shut up mostly.
Yeah. So it seems that there is more the question for the inner work. So what can I do internally with the image of my son and with my inner son and with my inner daughter. So that's more, I guess, the direction to go. And I don't know, so let's think about it, or not, but let's keep it as an open question, as an inquiry for 1 o'clock. Okay, see you later.